Welcome to the Double Dribble podcast with Dubin and Dakhil. That's Jared Dubin. I'm Mo Dakhil. We're not going to do the intros anymore, folks. You guys know who we are at this point. We're on the RealGM network. And let's just be honest, okay? There's not a lot to discuss in terms of NBA news right now. We are all waiting for the LeBron James domino to drop, and then that's going to lead to Jonathan Kuminga knowing where he's going to go. Don't know how much that's going to make a big difference in terms of the NBA races of things. But there's a bunch of little holdups there, but it all comes down to LeBron and Jared. World Cup final coming up. I told you it's going to be after the World Cup. So it's kind of what they're going to be doing. So I think we can expect that to be sort of a deal. Jared, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Obviously, this is not a subject that you have wanted to talk about anymore, but we are going to talk about LeBron once again because that's what everybody is waiting with bated breath to see. Like that's why everything is in a holding pattern right now because we want to see where he's going to go, and that'll knock down the other dominoes, including for the teams that he's considering signing with. So that's what we got to talk about. But we're going to talk about it with a twist. Everybody's talking about, obviously, where is he going to go? Where should he go? We did episodes on both of those things. What are these teams going to look like if he signs with them? What people are not necessarily talking about is what are these teams going to look like if he doesn't sign with them? And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think that's how we're going to do it. Again, I'm not the biggest, let's have this conversation, but I like this twist. This twist, I'm okay with having this type of conversation with. So, Jared, you wrote about this, and I'm going to let you pick the teams and how you doing. Folks, we did the Warriors last episode, right? Like we kind of talked about it in the Warriors last episode and what they are and with everything. So, Jared, I want you to just go through it. We're going to talk about the 5 other teams. I'm going to throw in a 6th team at the very end, just a curveball for you, Jared, to drive you nuts because I like to do that. You know, it's baseball season. I moved and I live near an indoor batting cage now. So at some point I will be going to the batting cages. I haven't swung a bat since I was maybe in the 4th grade. So that should be interesting. Jared, pick the team we're going to talk about first.
So I wrote about them this morning in alphabetical order of team names. So we're going to start the same way. Let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers first. And I think they're one of the most interesting ones because they are one of the teams that actually has like a ready-made person to step into the starting lineup if they don't sign LeBron in Dean Wade, who they realistically signed to start at like one of the combo forward spots to begin with. Obviously, he's not the same quality or same type of player that LeBron is, but they gave him a decent amount of money, and it seems like they signed him to start him at that spot. So they kind of know what they're going to do, at least if they don't sign him.
Yeah, and I think the thing I like about it, I actually just wrote an article ranking the big threes of some of these teams, although it's on Bleacher Report now. I ranked 5 of them. We kind of know the big 3 sort of model is kind of going out the window, but I included Philly in it. And this will surprise people. I've seen some pushback on it on the internet, shocking, the internet with pushback. But I had, obviously Tyrese Maxey, Jaylen Brown, and I had VJ Edgecombe as the big 3 because Embiid just doesn't play enough and we can't count on him to play enough in that regard. But if you have those 4 guys and you plug in LeBron, it's a pretty damn good roster. But without LeBron and then it's Dean Wade, it's pretty interesting, right? They still have concerns about the depth, especially in the front court. We know they picked up Simons, to come in off the bench. I'm kind of curious, how do you see this team working as it is, the way they're set up right now? How do they kind of operate with the way they're built?
I mean, I think Dean Wade is kind of a much cleaner fit for their starting lineup than LeBron is. They already have a bunch of pecking order stuff to work out between Maxey, Brown, Embiid, and even Edgecombe, where Dean Wade slots right in there as a low usage, moderate efficiency shooter who's just going to be able to stand in the corners and hit threes, where bringing in LeBron, you got to change your entire ecosystem to accommodate him. And you already have a guy who wanted his own team, really, in Jaylen Brown. And that's not going to happen here to begin with, because not only do you have Tyrese Maxey, who is either of the same caliber or even a better player than Jaylen Brown, depending on how you look at things, but you also have Joel Embiid, who takes up, a lot of real estate and a lot of usage rate when he's on the court. You add LeBron to that mix too, and he wasn't necessarily thrilled about being the third option already in LA, and now he comes in and it's like, he's not going to be the first option. Is he the second option? Is he the fourth option? Like, that would be kind of wild. And you're already then knocking down PJ Edgecombe into, a much different role than he was in his first season because of the arrival of Jaylen Brown. You knock him down even a peg further if you bring in LeBron. I think it slots in much cleaner if they have Dean Wade there.
Yeah, and I would say I think I agree with you on that. But how do you think this team, like the way I look at this team, I see this team being still a Tyrese Maxey team,
yes,
with Jaylen Brown kind of being the second creator and the guy that's gonna like, hey, I think crunch time, I think it's gonna be Jaylen Brown time. Right. I think they're gonna go to him down the stretch of that area. I think we're gonna see some interesting things from Nick Nurse. I hope, at least. I've not been the biggest Nick Nurse fan. If you guys have been following me since the Nerder She Wrote podcast at The Athletic all those days, like I think we think he's more creative than he is. This is his chance to actually prove how creative he is offensively. But I think
he's gotten less creative since like the early Toronto days, when he had a roster that allowed him to be as creative as possible, especially on defense.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see some stuff offensively where I think it's going to be, run a double drag with Brown as the ball handler and the two guards as your screeners. Run stuff with Maxey and Brown 2-man game. Like, I think we're going to see a lot of that stuff really where it works. And I think they're going to slot Edgecombe in opportunities for him to kind of attack. Like, if you have those two guys as your primary on one side and then kick it to Edgecombe to attack the seam on the second side, like, I kind of like where you're at with all that stuff. And none of this accounts for like what Joel Embiid will do when he's on the floor. Because again, I look at Embiid playing every few games, taking a few games off, playing a few more games. Like, I don't think like we talked about it, I think last podcast, where I said like, this is a team that's going to be a different team almost every night, like depending on who's on the floor for them. But I think the way they're kind of set up, like I like the way they're sort of positioned. They're solid in the backcourt. They got a great wing player in Jaylen Brown. And you know what? It might be Maxey or him as the closer. I could be wrong on them going more to Brown. I just think the size sort of thing adds a little bit more probability for me in terms of Brown being your closer. And I think you're put in a situation where you can kind of see how these pieces come together. But this is where, hey man, like you got to get creative if you're Nick Nurse with your offense. Like, this isn't a time to be shy.
Definitely agree with that in terms of getting creative. I like the idea of Jaylen Brown getting double drags from the guards. I like the idea of Maxey getting double drags from Edgecombe and Brown. I like the idea of running backwards pick and rolls with Maxey screening for Jaylen, or regular pick and rolls with Jaylen screening for Maxey. I don't know that I agree necessarily that Jaylen would be like the closer down the stretch of games. I think that the outlier mid-range shooting season that he had last year maybe is not something that is quite so sustainable. And Maxey is just the better shooter and probably the better driver, just based on the speed that he brings to the table. Brown obviously has the advantage over Maxey defensively, just because of the size and strength. He has, at least on the ball, he is considerably stouter and stronger. Away from the ball, he can get so-so at times, depending on how locked in he is. But taking the best guy on the other team is something that he is often willing to do. Obviously, we've seen that Edgecombe can defend smaller guards. I think with bigger wings, he might struggle a little bit, just because he is only like 6'3", 6'4", and he's strong, but he still is like slightly on the slighter side. He's got to grow into his body a little bit more. But we've seen Dean Wade has some defensive versatility too. He could defend guys of all different sizes. The defensive metrics have always looked at him pretty strongly. So I'm excited about what they can do on that end with those four guys. And then Embiid, when he's at his healthiest, can obviously protect the paint and protect the rim really well. But we also saw teams run him ragged when he's not at his healthiest. Like the Knicks attacked him over and over in that second round series, and they just had no hope defending in space.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be like for me. I think defensively they have two. Like they're kind of set up a little bit nicely defensively, where Brown takes the wings and Maxey can take or excuse me, not Maxey. Edgecombe can take the smaller guard. Quick guard sort of opportunity. I think I like the way with again how they're kind of organized. Where I think they're going to be an interesting team. I don't know how good they will be. I'm not coming in going like guaranteed, top 4 or whatever, but they have the talent. Depth is a concern with where they're at. And I think organizing your offense so it's not like what I'm most afraid of with this team, especially if they don't have LeBron, is they're going to be a your turn, my turn, his turn team. And that becomes a problem for them. I think when you have LeBron, what I would say the advantage for them when they have LeBron is he will be a steady playmaker that you could count on to make the right pass all the time. Like Maxey's gotten much better there, but like that's still not his primary thing. Like he's still a scorer more than like I will create for others in that. And I think that's where like that's the one thing I think they're missing as a team. And I think LeBron would bring that to them. But again, we're talking about if they don't get him, they got to figure out how to organize the offense more properly to be more organized. Even Simon's coming in off the bench, again, score first guard. Like those are the things that you have to kind of like I would find interesting in what they do offensively.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him. Maybe Phylon can bring some of that, presumably off the bench as well. Things would slot in a lot better for their front court depth if they had LeBron, because then you'd be bringing Dean Wade off the bench in addition to guys like Justin Edwards and Dominic Barlow and Adem Bona and Ariel Porty. The front court depth is really thin right now, especially in the games where they don't have Embiid.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the stuff that's going to be pretty interesting. So for us, like I think they're an interesting team with the way they're kind of the roster constructed. Obviously, there's some holes to fill, but like I'm going to be interested to see what they do and how Nick Nurse organizes them offensively and defensively with where they're at. Anything closing notes on Philly before we go to the next team?
I think, like you said, the big thing is it's going to be a test for Nick Nurse offensive creativity.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing. And I hope he's up for the challenge, man. Prove me wrong. I was crapping on you offensive creativity for like the past 6 years. Prove me wrong, Nick. Please. I will even I won't buy your hat. No, I won't buy your hat. That still drove me nuts. All right. Where are we going next, Jared?
Let's go to the team that seems like the favorite right now to sign LeBron, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who they would essentially be running it back with what they had last year, but without the guy that they seem to have settled on as the best option for the fifth man spot that has been a bugaboo for them for several years, because Dean Wade signed with the Sixers. So they would just be like, okay, now it's Max Strus or Sam Merrill or Jalen Tyson in that spot, and otherwise everything is the same.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same team right now than what we saw last year. I think the advantage for them, also a team I wrote in the put in my Big 3 article. What I find what I think is going to be most interesting is having Harden go through an entire training camp with the team. I think can allow you to be a little bit more organized. It's really tough to change your offensive system and your offensive scheme on the fly. And Harden's numbers from his Cavs days are actually really pretty good. Shot it well, averaged around 20 points a game, 7-something assists. The turnovers at 3 point something, which, a little bit high, but when you're going to have the ball in his hands as much, it's something you would expect. I kind of like, I'm gonna be more interested to see what they look like. That they left such a sour taste in our mouths Jared, with how they ended in the playoffs. I mean, they basically quit during the end of game 3. It just felt like there was nothing left for them at the end. And I'll be curious to see what they do. The key for me with this team more than anything else is, can they get Evan Mobley to be what he was, not last year, but the year before, the 24-25 season, where it looked like he really was kind of progressing in a nice way under Atkinson. A lot of grab and go rebounds and start the break. They were facilitating offense through him. I don't know how much that's going to happen with Harden on the ball a lot, how much it's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell on the ball a lot. But like, to me, that he is such a key player for this team, especially if they don't get LeBron.
Yeah, I think that the big key for me is actually on the other side of the ball, because they just couldn't stop anything against the Knicks in that series. And where did they finish in defensive efficiency last year? I can't remember off the top of my head. They were.
I'll pull it up while you do it.
They were 15th in defense, according to Basketball Reference. So you can be an average defense if you're a top 5 offense, but they finished 6th in offensive efficiency. That's like on the borderline of where you can be and still be a real contender, but they couldn't stop anything against the Knicks. And the Mobley-Allen combination really needs to be at the peak of its powers for them to survive defensively, because the Harden-Mitchell combination in the backcourt is going to be pretty flammable. And especially if you're starting Strus or Merrill in that 5th spot as opposed to Tyson, I think you're going to have some struggles defensively too, because you don't really have anybody to guard lead ball handlers on the opposing team, because you can't ask Donovan Mitchell to be the guy offensively and guard like the Jalen Brunsons of the world every night. You just can't do it.
Right. It's just difficult. Like, there's just no way to kind of fully get that stuff in. And I think that's where it's going to be. The defensive side is going to be challenging across the board for them. I almost, and maybe it's probably disrespectful on my end, but I almost just gave up on that side. Right. And like, I just need to see what they need to find a way. Like, I know that was a huge problem for them in the playoffs, but I feel like offensively also there's another level they can take, that they can go to, where I think it's going to be more fascinating with, like, hey, like, we can run more stuff and be more interesting and less predictable. Right. And I think that's going to be part of the challenge for them. Like, a lot of this stuff is going to be coaching challenges, right? Like, can you do this? Can you get this stuff done? I feel like they need to really almost take the ball out of Harden's hands a little bit more. Again, we've seen him do this in Brooklyn. I just don't know how willing he's going to do this, to be like, you're going to take the ball out of my hands and put it in Evan Mobley's hands. That's not KD. That's not Kyrie. That's not LeBron if he comes. That's not Donovan Mitchell. You're going to put it in his hands over my hands. Like, I could see that being a bit of a challenge. We should also note, by the way, Harden hasn't re-signed yet.
That's obviously something that's waiting for the LeBron domino to fall.
Yeah.
And he's going to get his deal, whether it's 2 or 3 years at, whether it's $25 or $30 million a year or whatever it is. Like, he's getting that deal soonish, depending on when LeBron decides to sign and with him.
So, like, I think that's going to be, obviously that's going to get done. But like, I'm curious to see, again, can Atkinson kind of reach back and get that Mobley? Because I was very excited about that Mobley. I thought he regressed this year, even before the Harden trade. I thought we saw less of that. I thought we saw less of him kind of just to grab and go on the break is such an advantage for them. Now, granted, that comes back to what you say. They got to get the stop first. But like, I think that's an area there where I think they can kind of do that. Defensively, I just don't know how well they'll be able to defend, with the backcourt that they're going to start with. Like, that's just not going to be a good defensive backcourt.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not worried about their offense, honestly. Like, even if you take the ball out of Harden's hands some, like, he has been throughout his career since he went to Houston, like, a guarantee of a top 10 offense when he's on the court, and he's always on the court, and Donovan Mitchell throughout his career has not been, a guarantee of a top 10 offense by himself, but he's obviously such a good offensive player. Those two guys are going to be able to figure out how to score efficiently. The other side of the ball is where I think they need to do their best work, and that depends in large part on the front court guys and how you're able to solve the issue of not necessarily being able to guard at the point of attack. And that's why I feel like Tyson might be their best option for that fifth spot this year. He's a good defender. He shot the ball really well last season, shot 40-something% from three. I know he fell out of the rotation a little bit toward the end of the playoff run, but I feel like he might be their best option just because of the size and the versatility that he brings defensively. Whereas, Merrill is he's not as bad as he looks defensively, but he's not a good defender. And I think Strus is one of those guys where his defense gets overrated because he looks like he's trying so hard.
The thing is, like, they're not bad. I like Tyson, by the way. I think they found that finally found their fifth starter. If they really wanted to embrace it, he has to develop a little bit more, but I think that's going to be an interesting thing. I've always liked Strus brings a level of toughness to this team that I don't think they really have in that regard. But I think it's just going to be hard, man, defensively. That's why I kind of gave up on them. That's why their offense, I think, has to even be another notch higher. And they have this, I don't want to call them a Ferrari, but like, I don't know, like almost a Ferrari. Like they could build their own Ferrari right now with Mobley at this point. But like, it'll be interesting to see.
I don't know if I'd go as far as a Ferrari. I think it's like
Porsche,
like a BMW or a Lexus.
Okay, no, that's too low. That's too low. Fuck you. At least a Porsche. Okay, I didn't go with Bugatti, but I like a BMW or
I don't know if I could get there.
Might as well go with the Peugeot. Like, what are we talking about here? This is not a.
Those are nice cars, man. Come on.
They're nice, but it's not like But I think they have.
I just don't think Mobley is that caliber of offensive player. Like, he's not going to be a guy who drives the offense by himself.
No, but he's a guy that you can use to facilitate stuff, free guys up. Listen, that's what they did in 24-25. That's what they did. He ran a lot of stuff. They ran a lot of stuff through Mobley, and it actually worked.
I think we have a difference here of like, what's a Ferrari? Like, Giannis is a Ferrari.
No, he's a Bugatti. Like, you gotta work with me here. I think, but anyways, like, I just think there's areas there where they can do. And again, they're one of those teams too. If they don't have LeBron, it's not LeBron changes things for them. But if they don't have LeBron, it's not a change of like, okay, what do we do? Whereas Philly still has to figure out how do we slot in Brown into this. Like, they're going to have a harder time if it's Brown and LeBron. Now we got to figure this whole thing out. It's more difficult. Cleveland, if they don't get LeBron and they are the quote unquote front runners, you know who my front runner is. But like they're kind of just set up. This is who they are. And they'll just kind of run back what they did last season and hope that's enough. They, to get them at least to the conference finals again. Jared, any other Cleveland thoughts before we go?
No, let's take our quick break and then we'll come back and talk about the next team.
You said it. Hit the button. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to continue on this tour of potential LeBron teams and what happens if they don't get him, because this is probably the only way I was really willing to discuss LeBron this week. Jared, where are we going next? I'm guessing because we're going alphabetical, we're going Denver.
Next, well, I did it alphabetical by the team name, not by the city name.
Yeah, that would make sense. Because
next we are going to the Miami Heat, and then we'll get to the Nuggets.
Yes. Yeah, tricky. This is the team where I think like they're one of these teams that absolutely need to get LeBron in some way, shape, or form because they just have so many holes.
Yeah,
like this is one of those where it's like, if they don't get LeBron, look, you have a building block of a really good defense, right? Obviously, Bam and Giannis on the back line.
Not Wiggins, just them. You got Davion Mitchell and Andrew Wiggins too.
You gotta let me finish sometimes, dog. Stepping on my points there. But yeah, you have four just solid defenders, two great defenders and two solid defenders, even probably higher than solid in that rankings. But I think you're set up there defensively, and then that allows you to kind of figure out what you're going to do off. My biggest question is offensively, because spacing is going to be so difficult for them. Who's also, by the way, who's their fifth starter if it's not going to be LeBron?
Either Tim Hardaway Jr. or Pelle Larsson, I guess, because you do need some shooting out there.
One would be nice.
Yeah.
One guy. I mean, I think that's where I agree with you, is going to be a curious sort of setup for them. I mean, their offense is where I'm most concerned. I think, I know it's going to be, the ball's going to be in Giannis's hands a ton, but with the lack of spacing, I mean, a 5-4 pick and roll between Giannis and Bam, cool. I'm going way under and not worried about Bam popping or anything like that. Even with the spacing, like, it's not something I'm going to be too concerned about. Like with their shooters, I'm just going to let them bomb away. I'm just going to pack the freaking paint on these guys. I'd be really curious. It's going to come down to a lot of the development, of how some of these other guys and diamonds in the roughs that they can find as they go through this. And this only gets funnier if they add DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, I would say, like, if teams want to force the Heat to build their offense out of Davion Mitchell and Pelle Larsson and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Andrew Wiggins shooting threes, like, go ahead. As long as you don't let Giannis get to the rim as often as possible. Like, I've been less sanguine about their chances of having a top 10 offense and defense on the podcast than I was in the initial trade analysis that I wrote at Last Night in Basketball. Basically, I based it on the history of Giannis and Bam. Like, Giannis' teams on average have been the 8th best offense in the league since he became an MVP caliber player. Bam's teams on average have been the 8th best defense since he became a starter. So I was like, right there, you have sort of the foundation of being able to finish in the top 10 on both sides of the court, which is generally the line of a contender. But the question obviously was, are they going to be able to fill out the roster in such a way that you actually accomplish that? And I don't think I hit hard enough that it was going to be really, really difficult for them to do that. And we've seen that throughout this free agency period, that I don't think that they've filled out their roster in a way that's going to allow them to be a top 10 offense. So they're going to need to be like a top 5 defense to be able to be a real contender.
Yeah, and that's going to be an important sort of challenge, because I think they can be a top 5 defense. I think their offense is going to be bad. I just don't know how you can build a fluid offense that makes sense, that puts pressure on defenses. Even with Giannis getting downhill, he's going to have to go through a sea of bodies to get there. And in some cases, some of his own teammates, right? Like, Bam doesn't operate out of out to the 3-point line. Like, that's not a threat. Cool. You're going to put Bam in the dunker spot. Okay. And when Giannis gets downhill, Bam's guy's going to rotate off of him. They're not covering the shooters. They're going to force you guys to try to beat them from the outside. It's going to work on some nights because Tim Hardaway Jr. and Pelle Larsson will have a crazy shooting night, but it won't be enough. Like, and adding LeBron doesn't fix their shooting so much. He's been a better shooter as of late in his career, but like, they still going to have a lot of problems with what they do, but at least they have a guy who can be enough of a threat from the outside that they won't be able to peel off. They won't be able to come off. And then they just got to figure out their rotations of guys so that they can always try to find a way to have Hardaway or Larson always on the floor, which will hurt their defense to a degree, but with the guys they have, it won't be catastrophic. But like, this is a team to me that like really needs to hope they find a way to pull LeBron. And if they don't get LeBron and their backup answer is DeMar DeRozan, woof.
Yeah, I would say it's also going to be a challenge for them because I think they're going to have to completely revamp their offense again. I don't know that you can run the same offense that you ran last year without the kind of guards that you had last year. Like, obviously, Giannis can get downhill and do a lot of the driving that they did last season, but without Norm Powell and without Hero and those guys that were able to get downhill from the perimeter, I don't know if you can run the same kind of stuff that you did last season. It's going to be a challenge for Eric Spoelstra. Not that he's not up to the challenge. We've seen throughout his career that he's one of the most up to the challenge coaches on both sides of the ball in terms of creativity, but it's definitely a new and distinct challenge for them in terms of what they're going to have to do this year compared with what they were doing last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And last year they did try to go away from the pick and rolls and run the Memphis offense, and we're going to play fast, and that's something that they can try to stick with. But in the half court, it's really going to be problematic for them. Where else you want to go? Or anything else left on the Miami bone to pick?
Yeah, I do think also like they need the perimeter playmaking from LeBron. Like they don't have
Yeah.
really like good passers on the roster. Like Giannis and Bam are good passers for their position, but they don't have like high level passers on the roster to be able to create for others.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? And that's again, that kind of goes back to sort of what I was talking about with Philly, with LeBron being that kind of guy. That would be the role he'd have to fit in what he would need to do with them. Um, let's go to the next team. Who do you got next? It's the Nuggets now, right? Alphabetically, now that I got the this right, or am I still an idiot?
No, it is the Denver Nuggets. We could talk about them next. And they are another team that is basically running it back from last year, but without some key pieces. Like Tim Hardaway Jr. is now in Miami. Jonas Valanciunas was waived and is presumably going back to Europe. Even like Bruce Brown is still unsigned. Like we thought last year that they did a really good job building out the depth of their bench for the first time in a while. It didn't work out that way. And those guys are all gone now unless they decide to bring Brown back. And Peyton Watson might not be there either because he's still a restricted free agent.
That's the big one, right? Like Peyton Watson's restricted free agency. Now we've talked about it before, but they've said over and over again, we're going to match any offer that comes his way. We're going to match. They're letting everybody know that they're not interested in a sign and trade. Also, the longer this goes, makes me wonder if at some point they will concede and go to a sign and trade if they can get some proper pieces back. But like that's a key thing for them, right? And I think we'll talk at some point at length about what Peyton Watson's options are, but like they need to bring him back, especially when you look at Aaron Gordon's hamstring injuries. By the way, Watson's hamstring injuries, right? And his problems, but they need to kind of figure out where they go, because I still think this team would have had a much better shot had they been healthy in the first round against Minnesota when they went down with injuries and everything. And they went out in an embarrassing fashion. Like they need to figure out what they're going to do. How LeBron and Jokic like on the floor together as teammates would be a lot of fun. The passing and the creativity. Like I wouldn't even run an offense if I was Adelman. I would just give it to those two guys. I'm not going to tell the artist how to create art. I'm going to just let the two of them go and have fun with it, with everything. But I think the concerns again come down to like, what are you going to do with Peyton Watson is almost a bigger concern to me than if LeBron goes there in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do with Peyton Watson? Obviously, is the big thing. But what are you going to do with the bench in general? Like right now, even if you include Watson, their bench is like Watson, Tyus Jones, Julian Strother, and Marvin Bagley, and like Deron Holmes, Zeke Naji, and this Alpha Diallo guy that they signed. Maybe Jalen Pickett if he comes back. Maybe Bruce Brown if he comes back. Like, yikes!
Yeah,
and like. Let's say Watson does come back. How is that going to work? Like, are you paying him all this money to come off the bench still? Or is Christian Brown going to the bench? Is Cam Johnson going to the bench? How does that work? Like, they really need Watson's perimeter defense out there, I think. Like, Christian Brown was not the level of defender that they need that spot to be.
And he can't be that. Like, that's the thing. I think Christian Brown defensively is good as good as your help guy, but he can't be your primary guy pretty much on most nights. And that's where Watson's got to come in and handle that stuff. And that way Gordon can take just the bigs in that regard and doesn't have to really try to guard down. I think that's more of what they need. The Watson signing is so pivotal to them. And then we can kind of see what happens with LeBron James if he comes or not. But if he doesn't come, like it's almost even more important for them and more like, okay, we got to sign him. We got to make sure we get him on board. And I'm worried about them. I think Cam Johnson will have a better season. I'm just going to bet Christian Brown will have a better season, but I'm not going to say that with any level of confidence like I do with the Cam Johnson one. I think Watson, though, if he comes back, Jared, I think he starts.
I think he's got to.
You just have to at this point. Like, and he showed like some nice stuff when Jokic was out. He showed a little bit of ability to do stuff with the ball in his hands, a little bit off the bounce. You know, he improved as a shooter. Like, I think he kind of slots in perfectly for them in that starting lineup. And I think but again, that's why it comes down to why it's so important that they actually sign him.
Yeah, and you got to remember Gordon is going to miss time. So Watson's staying in that spot, and then you can obviously slide Brown back into the starting lineup. I think you would have some issues guarding bigs, and especially bigger forwards in that circumstance. But, you know, Cam Johnson could do a little bit of that. Obviously, he's got more bulk than Watson does at this point, but that's obviously an issue.
Not much
on the nights that you're
not
missing
much.
Gordon.
Cam Johnson's a skinny dude.
He is, but Watson is like a really skinny dude.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder also, like, they also have the added stress of the Jokic free agency, which, yes, he's gonna sign the 5-year super duper $1 billion max, but it's always out there, right? And like, that's gonna just be like, hey, if things start going, they start out poorly. Say they're like 9-17 or something, and I
I don't
threw out
see
a
that
red.
coming. Yeah,
But then things start to get louder with that.
even if they're 19 and 17, I think things start to get louder.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a sort of a question of like, because he wants to compete for a championship type of stuff. So that's where I think it gets really sort of interesting with them and what goes on. And obviously, if they don't get LeBron, it's going to. This isn't with LeBron. This is like the most like a very fun type of fit. There still would be a lot of questions in terms of shooting and defense and things like that, you know, but it gets really fun. It would just be fun to watch Jokic and LeBron, and I just don't think that's ever going to happen in any regard to that one. Any final thoughts on Denver if they don't get LeBron?
Yeah, I think another thing that I don't know that you have to worry about it necessarily, but it is a potential issue. Like Jamal Murray had the best regular season of his career last year. What if he doesn't, like, what if he goes back to the level that he played at in the regular season for most of his career, and your bench depth is depleted, and you have this Jokic stuff hanging over you, and you might not have Peyton Watson, and Aaron Gordon is going to miss time. Like, there are some pretty big potential concerns here. And I think Murray going back to the level that he was at for most of his career, as opposed to the level he was at last year. Like, obviously you would hope that he's able to keep the same level in the regular season, but that was at least slightly out of character for him in terms of his level of regular season performance.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he'll be fine.
I don't think he's going to be bad or anything, but like he was an All NBA player this past year. That has not been the case. He hadn't even been an All-Star before that, right?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's always, but like the reason why he's never been an all-star really is always like injuries early on, or he starts slow and then he comes on very, very hard with how he gets everything rolling. And I think that's sort of the important thing there. But like, I think he'll be fine in the long run of things. But yeah, like he did have an unbelievable season. Can he continue that? Can he be, is that who he is now? Or is there a little bit of a different sort of dichotomy there for the Nuggets to figure out? All right, let's take a quick break. Then we're going to talk about your 5th team, and I'm going to add a 6th team in here that I know you didn't write about. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Jared Dubin. I don't know why I said your full name. That was weird. Who is the 5th team and 5th and final team that we're going to talk about if they don't get LeBron? Because we already talked about the Warriors. Go check out the episode from Monday.
It is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are the team that I think has the most obvious need for like a LeBron James type of player in their lineup. Like LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, LeBron James, Rudy Gobert is a pretty kick-ass lineup where you have, I think, everything you need with that group when all of those guys are out there on the floor, which is obviously a concern with both LaMelo and LeBron. But if you have all those guys out there, you have everything you need in terms of at least a 5-man group. When you have Ayo Dosunmu in the starting lineup instead of LeBron, all of a sudden you're pretty small. Jaden McDaniels is playing the 4 pretty much full time. And you look at the depth behind them, it's like Trey Lyles at the 4, and like maybe you're playing Josh Green or Terrence Shannon or Jalen Clark in super small looks at the 4. And really the only other center you have on the roster besides Gobert is Johan Berenger. Like the front court is really thin. They can't even bring like a Kyle Anderson back because he signed with the Raptors. And I don't know what other options you have at center besides Gobert and Berenger, unless you're going to use like Trey Lyles as a small ball center, which I guess is technically an option, but it's not necessarily an attractive one.
Definitely not an attractive deal. Although, again, big fan of Trey Lyles. If you know TLT, Trey Lyles time. But I think they are so incredibly small that like when they get, without LeBron in this roster, that's what hurts them in the Western Conference. Now we might be able to go like they're going to be small and fast. I still think they're going to be pretty good. I know we have differences on the LaMelo trade and how it's going to work out. I think defensively, obviously, is going to be a big question mark for them. But the rebounding aspect of it is really the concerning thing for me of like, how will they be able to deal with the size that they have to go through when they're going up against Hartenstein and Chet, the Spurs with Wemby and, Harris being a good rebounder, but really just even their guards do a great job rebounding. How will they deal with that? How do they deal with Jokic, and Gordon, assuming they're healthy and dealing with that? Like, that's going to be a real nightly challenge for them. And like Finch has to already be talking about gang rebounding with these guys, like repeatedly over and over again of like, we have to make sure we hit this. We have to make sure we're on top of this and focused on that. Cause that's going to be the thing. If they get LeBron, that's a very fun 5-man lineup that I think can cause trouble for everybody in the Western Conference. Depth still a little bit of a concern. Obviously, Ayo comes off the bench, but again, it still highlights sort of the weakness that they have at the big spot. I like Berenger. I think he's got some promise, but still a little bit raw. This will be a development season for him, I think. But they got to really kind of figure out, like, how are we going to rebound defensively? Offensively, I think they'll be fine. Offensively, I think it's easier if they don't have LeBron, right? It's going to be the, Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball show with, Ant working sometimes on ball, working off ball, and LaMelo getting him shots and opportunities that he's not used to being able to get with some of the other guards he played with. When you add LeBron to the mix, it gets a little bit more dicey with, where the ball goes and who's really facilitating as often. And I can see that turning into a your turn, my turn, his turn deal. But I do worry defensively with their size and lack of it if they don't get LeBron.
Yeah, it's the rebounding, the size, and just like a physicality aspect, I think. Like LaMelo is not the most physical player in the world and obviously is on the slighter side. McDaniels is a physical player, but for a 4, he's on the slighter side. So you got some physicality issues to deal with there. And like you said, some of the bigger teams in the Western Conference, some of the bigger teams still in the Eastern Conference too, like they could struggle with the physicality aspect too.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be really something that I find challenging there. I don't think he's going to go there again, folks. I'm just going to say it again. I think all of this is a smokescreen. All of this is bullshit, and he's already going back to the Warriors. I'm just saying it again. I could be big wrong and have egg on my face, but I think all of this stuff is kind of where I'll be curious to see. It's just where I think it goes. Jared, any final thoughts? Because I don't have a lot of thoughts there on Minnesota.
It's just the depth. It's the depth. It's the rebounding, and it's the defense that are the concerns. But the depth is the biggest thing, particularly in the front court. They just don't have real options at the 4. And you have to make McDaniels a full-time 4, essentially, where he's basically never played there before. Like they've gone occasionally to small looks, but they've always had Randall or Towns in addition to Naz Reid and Gobert.
Yeah, and I would say that like it takes away also some of the stuff that we saw from McDaniels last season and sort of the growth and development we have from there, because then it puts him in a little bit more of a difficult position of like he has to exert so much more energy on the defensive end guarding bigs and dealing with that than what he had before. Like it gets difficult. And then the idea everybody was talking about was like, well, they have Ant and McDaniels that will be able to allow them to hide LaMelo defensively. Well, not really if McDaniels can't guard on the perimeter and has to guard a big. I think that's where it gets really sort of that's where the questions are for them with that. Can you
need
do you
Io
want
you need Io to be able to guard lead ball handlers in that case.
Yeah, and we're talking like the SGAs, we're talking about like the Castles and the Dylan Harpers and Jamal Murray and the stuff. Like you're gonna need Io to be able to do that, and that one might be a tough ask. I think Io's good, but I don't know if he can do all of that stuff. Jared, do you have a guess as to who my surprise team is?
I don't at all.
Okay, I'm disappointed because I literally texted you that LeBron's intrigued by the Indiana Pacers.
Okay.
And
I forgot that you texted me that because I got that text. It woke me up in the middle of a nap, and then I went right back to sleep.
Sorry for waking you up from your nap. What an annoying text to wake you up from a nap, to be like, fucking Mo, like leave me alone. Yeah, no, I actually don't really have any thoughts. I just thought it'd be funny to bring it up to you. And my response after that text message was, besides the Lakers and the Kings, I think LeBron will be attached to every team by the end of all of this. Even Memphis, who he kind of shitted on, he's gonna be like, well, LeBron's felt bad about his comments about Memphis, so now he wants to go pay it back to them. Like, I don't know.
He's intrigued by the idea of not having to stay at the hotels in Memphis.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And he's heard the real estate there. The houses are really nice over there, and some of them are. I don't have much. I mean, listen, the Pacers like that. I don't know where that came from. It might have been all bullshit, but it was just funny to throw that your way as a randomness sort of situation. I don't have much else, Jared. Nothing's happened. I've been watching the notifications, hoping something would pop off while we're on the podcast and save me from having to talk about. Well, if it popped off, I would be talking about LeBron, but at least we would know with certainty where he's going and all that fun stuff. You have anything you want to close with?
No, I want to know what you had to say about the Pacers if they don't get LeBron.
I think the Pacers are going to be good next year. If Tyrese Halliburton's healthy, I think they're going to be good. I love the Zubac trade. I know it cost them a lot with the 5th pick. I think there's a lot of funness coming out of that team, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Pacers back in the running again. And I think they're going to be a top 4 team in the East.
Top 4 is aggressive, but if Halliburton is fully healthy and looks like the guy that he was before, even if he gets back to like 90% of the guy that he was before, I think they can maybe get there. Like a Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Zubac lineup is really fun in a way, and in a different way than it was with Miles Turner there, just because they didn't really have like a brutalizing post guy before in a way that Zubac brings that to the table. And I think at this point, Zubac is just a better rim protector than Miles Turner is too.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the deal there. Like I'm excited for that. I am very excited to watch that team. Like that is the team I'm really eager to kind of see how it goes. I hope Halliburton's healthy. I hope we see all I hope everybody's healthy, every team, because it's more fun that way. But I want to see the way this kind of plays out because I think they can really be a problem in the East. Like I really do, and no shock that I'm going to be super aggressive in July, and then we come around September and we'll be like, I don't know, with all of that. So yeah, I think that's it for us today, Jared.
I think so.
Before we go, I'm going to let listeners know we're not going to do it yet, but at some point we're going to do a mailbag episode. So start percolating what questions you want to ask us. And we'll when we're ready for the call to action and ask you guys to bring us some questions, we'll do that because I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Doing podcasts in the summer gets a little bit hard. Run out of things to talk about. I can only do this LeBron thing so many times.
We're going to do it at least one more time, depending on when and where he signs. So that'll be fun as well.
But the best part is when we do that, we don't have to talk about the other teams because everybody else can come back to this podcast and listen to what we think is, the issue for those teams that did not get him. I think that's it, folks. Thank you so much for listening to the Double Dribble podcast.
See y'all.